Higher Education Commission has been told by the government that this year there are going to be substantial budget cuts for higher education. What has been reported so far is that there's going to be about 10 to 15% cut in the recurrent expenditure for higher education and about a 50% cut in the development expenditure. The consequences are very clear. The higher education budget is essentially passed on by Higher Education Commission to the various universities. A 10 to 15% cut in recurrent expenditures means that universities will not be able to expand any existing programs, and secondly, they might actually have to cut expenses on a number of areas. This might mean cutting staff, both academic and non-academic, as well as some of the other expenses that the universities do. The other side of it is that 50% cut in development means that no new project will happen. The throw forward of the older projects will be so much that there will not be any space for any new project, and in fact some of the older projects that are still under construction might have to be stopped as well. If you take them both together, the consequences can be fairly large for higher education sector. Even today, with all the expansion that has happened in the last 15 years, the number of children or young people in Pakistan that go to university is still lower than what the numbers would be in comparative countries in South Asia as well as otherwise. So we need further expansion instead of cutting down of expenses on higher education. But even more importantly, such cuts, when they come suddenly, make it very difficult for universities and for higher education sector to make decisions on any rational basis. What will get cut will be what is easier to cut, and that will always create problems. So it will not be, the universities will not get the time to think through what the cuts should be. There is a side of it that might be good also. The universities do need to look for other sources of funding other than Higher Education Commission. This is especially true for universities that are in the public sector. A bad consequence will be that they will have to raise fees, and the fee raise will be substantial. Now, public sector universities are heavily subsidized. Raising fee means that on the margin, those children or young people who have difficulty even today affording higher education, it will make it even more difficult for them to come to university. That's a very undesirable consequence, obviously, of any fee raise. But the universities might have no option other than to raise money. The other side of it is Pakistan does not have a very organized philanthropy option or non-fee or non-government option for raising funding for universities. This is something that needs to be developed. Every university ought to have an endowment fund. Every university has to have some funding coming from other sources. That needs to be developed now, and I think HEC is looking into the possibilities, but the universities will have to do that as well. Having said all that, the cuts we are being threatened with are substantial. They will mean layoffs in universities. They will mean no expansion for the period that the cuts will hold, and they will also mean raising of fees in the short to medium run. All of these options will make it very hard for students to get to university and get a good education. The PTI government should really think, even though it's time for austerity, should think very hard about its priorities before it actually decides to cut higher education funding.